start thinking about physical inactivity as a disease. We now know that it carries the same mortality risk as smoking, cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes. Yet, when the average American reaches age 50, they lose about 10% of their peak muscle mass. By the time they reach age 70, they're losing about 40% of their peak muscle mass. And this isn't just about looking strong, it's about physical independence, it's about survival. So higher muscle mass is associated with a 30% lower all-cause mortality. Grip strength is actually a better predictor of cardiovascular-related mortality, the number one killer in the United States, than high blood pressure, and yet nobody talks about it. And strength is also associated with a 42% lower dementia risk. And yet we think of resistance training as an add-on, as a luxury. It is not. It is a fundamental pillar of aging. It increases muscle mass, muscle strength, and bone mineral density. So fractures.
So that was a reel that I saw the other day. Dr. Rhonda Patrick. I discovered her on Joe Rogan. Go figure. But she's a PhD. She's super, like, I don't know all of her credentials. I could go on and on, but I thought that reel was fascinating because not necessarily with like grip strength and in relating that to running, and I just think it's interesting in like ultra running. Say if you get to the start line, a lot of times like the people, like, they're a lot older. There's a wide variety of people at a start line at an ultra, and I just thought it was interesting that I guess the 50-year-old now, as compared to when I was a kid, is totally different. And that's why like I've admired the group, and I admire the ultra running as a whole, because you guys are crushing it as you guys are getting older. And it's not a dig at aging or anything, but it's like you guys are inspiring me and just not stopping. And yeah, that was a long-winded ramble to start this thing off, but
yeah, I still think that's a nice way of calling us old. But no, I agree with you, and I think, you know, as I'm like 2 years away from 50. Mm-hmm. Our guest is a little bit closer to that, but it is interesting because you go to ultras, and you know, right now we typically break things down. Like I'm in the 40 to 49 age group. Mm-hmm. But if you really look, the 50 to 59 age group doesn't really slow down. Mm-hmm. So like I think as you age, you're going to lose some of that like peak speed, but I think with ultras, it's the mentality of never giving up and just almost wisdom. Like I have ran in races where the young people just take off flying, and sometimes they just smoke me, but other times, like halfway through the race,
when they catch it up,
they're like on the side of the trail dying, and I'm like, "You okay?" So
yeah.
But yeah.
Honestly, I should have played a Jocko reel because our guest the other day said that he had no idea who Jocko was, mm-hmm. And so, but the reel was because I think Jocko's in his 50s. He was like, "So what's the key to aging?" Because he doesn't look like he's 50. And he's like, "Don't stop. Do jiu-jitsu, run, lift weights, don't stop." And I was like, I should have played that one.
Yeah, and the other one I like too is Tony Horton. His thing is
him too.
Age is just a number, and that's true. I mean, if you see him now, I mean, his job is basically being a fitness person. But mm-hmm. you know, if you see him like in his 60s, it's still pretty impressive mm-hmm. what he can do. But
yeah.
So yeah, like I said, my goal is to just, like she said in the video, keep moving, keep working out. Mm-hmm. I know eventually I'm going to slow down. That's just part of life. But you know, I go to ultras, or there was one last year. There were 5 people over 80, I think, that hit 100 miles in a race.
My goodness.
You know,
just don't stop.
And so like, yeah, like, you know, there's not a lot of them just because, you know, age catches up eventually, but just to see them out there doing that it's amazing.
Yeah. Let's just jump right into it, bro.
Yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, our guest is pushing 50, and I've actually known him since high school. We actually met running cross country. One of our previous guests, Rob Hayes, he was the assistant coach at the time, so we kind of have a connection there. So So yeah, without any more, let's just welcome Shane Plemons to the show.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, like I said, we go back a long way, so I know you quite a bit. Devin has spent several miles running with you, but we always start each show with the quote we got from Dylan Bowman, or the question we got from him is, what makes you, you?
What makes me, me? I would say probably my upbringing. Just, I had a very close family, mom and dad and sister. We were all very involved in the high school and, growing up. They attended every one of our events, just kind of brought us up with family is everything, family first, and it just kind of molded my life.
Yeah, and it's really cool because I remember back in high school cross country, even it was like a family thing. Because I remember, well, your sister ran, and I remember, your parents went to everything. My parents, once they found out that parents went to those things, like after the first meet, they're like, wait, people do that? They went to it all. Brandy, my wife, was on the team as well, and her parents were there, so it's...
Yeah, it was always almost a family gathering every cross country meet, or every cross country get together,
Yeah, and I think that the podcasts that we do with like a fellow Bucklehead, I think they're a lot of fun because sometimes I've run with you a lot and we've shared lots of miles, but I don't like totally know you, and that's the same with like a lot of the guests that we've had on, is that like we kind of go in depth with like their story, because you can talk about casual stuff and running all the time, but like when you're running in a group setting, very rarely do you go back and sometimes get personal with stuff. And so I think doing these podcasts are a lot of fun. And so, but I met you, so we've talked about it a couple of times. I'm pretty sure I met you guys in person when when Caleb invited me to run with you guys, when you guys were doing your DIY 50 miler because of COVID.
Because of COVID?
Yeah. I do remember, I don't think I said it, but like that was my first like sort of group together outside of running or outside of work during COVID. So for me, it was like, are we going to get in trouble for doing this? Like, are we breaking the law right now? So I thought that was kind of fun. And then I think after that, I was added to the group chat and all that stuff. And then really shared some miles with you when you were attempting Prairie Spirit. Or it was Prairie Spirit, right?
Trails.
Was it the Rails to Trails? So the
Rails
fall
to
version?
Trails in October.
Yeah. So, and I was like, that was right before I was about to attempt my first 100 miler at the Ozark, and so I was like, well, this will be ran 20 miles with you. I had never been to an actual ultra like that before, and that was a ton of fun.
I think that was all of our first.
Yeah.
You
We've said that a couple times.
Brian,
You were the guinea pig.
One, but
Yeah, but that was our first like group crewing attempt, and I mean it was a success. You finished it, but yeah, that was the first time I met you.
Yeah, so I guess we'll just keep thinking back in the past a little bit. Like I said, I know a little bit about you, probably more than Devin does, but people listening may not know much of anything. So what, obviously you ran high school cross country, so we talked about that, but, kind of growing up, what other sports, or were you involved in other sports or activities that kind of led to where you're at now?
I actually started running cross country to train for and lose weight for wrestling, because wrestling was my primary sport in high school. Once we, I was real active with band, in other groups, ROTC, throughout high school. And then once I went to college, I ran for a little while, my freshman year, not on a team or in a club or anything, just kind of on my personal. And then I just realized that it was a lot more fun to sleep in and, not run for a while.
You see, that's what I did this morning.
Yeah. Being lazy was a lot easier than getting up and running every morning. So I kind of fell out of the habit for a while, and then kind of didn't pick back up until my oldest daughter was in getting ready to start high school and her summer running. So that was kind of when I started running again to get back to help her get ready for cross country.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. You went out for cross country because of wrestling. I went out for cross country just because of basketball, like, getting in shape, the fall season for that. And I don't know, I ended up, not going to get into my story, but I didn't stick with basketball, but I stuck with cross country, all 4 years. It was just a fun thing to do. So.
Well, and it's, the cross country became, like I said, more of a family environment. It was the comfortable, and even looking back at high school now, I've got a few good memories from wrestling and stuff, but all of my good memories were from cross country and the events that Coach Wiley and Rob Hayes and everybody put together, and the activities we all did as a team.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting, and a lot of people describe it too, because like I never ran cross country in high school, even though my small high school had it. But I always thought of it as an individual sport, like not quite like track, but it is totally different than track. Even though like track is also team oriented, but I think every person that I've ever talked to that has run cross country, it's like you're on a team. Like it's a team event. It's kind of same with wrestling. Like it is an individual. Like you are doing it, you are running the miles, but you're also on a team and you're competing against teams, and you have a team. Like you're all doing it together, and that even translates later on into ultra running. And you're from Topeka?
I am from Topeka originally.
Nice.
Yeah. Lived here all my life.
Nice.
Yeah, so like most people do, you get involved in sports in high school, or college, and once you get out, like life just takes over, and you stop moving as much for most people, not everybody. And I know by the time you said it was when your daughter was going into high school, and so you had 2 daughters at
Correct.
well, you still have the 2, but you're married. And if you don't mind sharing, like I kind of like the story of what kind of got you finally off the couch and realized you had to do something.
Yeah. So we were trying to get Cameron involved with running because I had such fond memories of it growing up. She came home from one of the summer runs, her first summer run. She was like, I just really don't think this is for me. I didn't enjoy it. And, we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and I made the comment, well, you really can't come home and just sit on the couch. And she looked at me and said, why not? You do. And at that point, I said, okay, go get your tennis shoes on. We're going for a run. And I got up, and I've been running ever since.
Yeah, so kind of one of those moments you're like, hey, you can't say that, but yeah, you're right.
It made me realize that I wasn't setting the best example.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be curious as to if you had any sort of like weight loss after that and going through that, but it is interesting. I think every person that we've talked to, when they get into running or they go on like a weight loss journey, there's a moment, and sometimes it's a reflection, sometimes it's like huffing and puffing up some stairs, and in your case, it was your daughter just straight up calling you out. It's like, why can't I sit when you are? And like right now, like I have 3 young boys, and I joke now because my son can beat me in Super Smash Bros. And it's like, I have to always go to the gym because I have to always be stronger than you because I cannot allow you to be stronger than me. But I don't know, I just think it's interesting when there's a moment where it just clicks and then your life changes. And you may not know that at the time, but reflecting back on it, like that was the moment. And so, yeah.
And I had gotten fairly heavy for me, when I was in high school, I wrestled. My freshman year, I was 103 pounds. I wrestled 103. Even as a senior, I was in the 125 pound weight class. I had gotten up to 230 pounds at that point in time. And, once I started running and feeling, hey, this is, kicking my butt, I decided it was exactly that. I need to make some changes. So I laid off all soda pop, all that kind of stuff. I still don't eat right, but you know, I try to at least think about what I'm eating. And I was able to drop several pounds and get back down to around the 180, you know, just from running and laying off pop.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's yeah, like I said, it's that one moment, but I mean, it totally changed a lot of things in your life. I mean, you have a lot of running friends now that you never knew at that time, and like I say, you've done some pretty amazing races and training runs just from that one moment.
Well, and I had run with Cameron all summer long. We continued our runs, you know, and we really never got over a couple miles over the summer. And Mark Price, one of your previous guests, I work with Mark, and he talked me into, there was the Royals 5K over at Kauffman Stadium. And if you guys haven't done that race, that's a great race, especially Devin, you with boys, you know, your sons and stuff. That would be a fantastic race for them to do. But he talked me into doing that, and I went and barely survived it, but I got through it, you know. And once we got done with that race, he started working on me for Topeka to Auburn half marathon the following January. So that would have been about August of 2017.
Oh, wow.
And he talked me into signing up for Topeka to Auburn half marathon in January. And as he finally got me talked into it and training for it. He said, you know, I kind of feel bad because that's a tough one to have your first. So then he talked me into signing up for a Kansas half, and that was my first half marathon in that November. And then we ran Topeka to Auburn in January.
Yeah, and that's also one thing. There's a couple things I want to talk about, but talking about Mark previously, like I hope that the Top City half will, because for a lot of us and a lot of people in Topeka, that Topeka to Auburn race was the first race for a lot of people, and it was my first half marathon. It was many others. I think it was Audrey's. I think it was many others. But I hope that the Top City half marathon for a lot of locals and a lot of Topeka got people getting into running, it will turn into like, well, my first race was the Top City half, and I'm so excited to run that race this year. And then the second one was I was called out a couple years ago when I shared something that was like I posted like a 20-mile run that I did, and then in the memory I shared back when I thought 20 miles was hard, and then I had someone reach out to me saying, hey, you know, for a lot of people 20 miles is really hard or like a big deal. And so it's like that changed my way of talking about people that are running shorter distances, or like, hey, a mile is a mile, that's a big deal. And so that first 5K, like it made me think of a couple podcasts I've been listening to recently, but Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, they're comedians, and Bert Kreischer is known for taking his shirt off, and he's got a big pot belly and it's just super funny. But he gets into running, and then they put on now what's called the Two Bears 5K. And so it's like a bunch of comedians, most of them, like being a comedian is not the best lifestyle for a lot of them, but it brings out so many people. And like Jelly Roll came out, and that was his first 5K, and Jelly Roll is on a tear with his weight loss. And just, I love when people it doesn't have to be a marathon as their first step. Like go sign up for the 5K, and that could be that first step. And then maybe a 5K is enough, and then you just go that route. But more often than not, it progresses, and in our case, progresses a lot.
Yeah, I think we've all had that moment. Social media is good and bad.
Yeah.
And I've been guilty of that too. Like I went and ran, I don't even know which marathon, or it was a half marathon. And it was just, like I hadn't really been training, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go do this just for fun. And it was my slowest half marathon ever. And when I posted, you know, I'm like, you know, I ran this and whatever, it's my slowest one, I'm just cruising, having fun. And that's, you know, when someone else is like, well, you said you're just having fun and screwing around, but I can't ever get that fast. And I'm like, okay, you know, like, so like it wasn't, I wasn't doing it to cut on anyone, but it does kind of like, you have to be careful with your words because it takes away like what might be a great achievement for someone else. I mean, they may have ran as hard as they could and been slower than my time or barely beat it, and here I am going, I'm just messing around. So it is a big thing there, and you know, so just talking about the progression. I mean, you hit that 5K, and I don't think, I mean, we kind of lost touch after high school or after college, whatever, for a while. So you did the 5K, you did the Kansas half, Top City half marathon, and then where did it go from there? Because at some point you got the crazy idea of doing was it the I-35 challenge? Is that what they call it?
Yeah. So from after doing Topeka at Auburn, you know, like I said, that was in January of 2018. I knew Mark had run the Kansas City Marathon, which was in, I think it's October. And so it was like, well, do I have time to get ready for that? You know, after, you know, I'm on top of the world, I just ran a half marathon. And it's like, I think I can do this. And went out and signed up for the Kansas City Marathon, trained all summer for that. Went out and about mile 16 or 17 of that, swore up and down I would never ever run more than a 5K again. And finally finished that. It's still my slowest marathon, but like you said, there's a lot of people that, you know, they would gladly take my time for that. But it's one that I'm proud of because I finished, but I look back at how much I struggled all the way through that and said, I probably rushed jumping into a marathon at that point. The following year, I wanted to kind of make amends. There was a new marathon down in Wichita called the Chisholm Trail Marathon. And we signed up for that in March and went down and ran. And that marathon went a lot better. We had a lot of fun on that race. And at that point in time, Kansas City started pushing what they were calling the I-35 challenge, which you ran the Kansas City half or full marathon on Saturday, and then you went up to Des Moines on Sunday and ran either the half or the full. And I got the bright idea to go ahead and try to do full, because why not try the max, you know?
Why not?
But we went up and trained for that all summer long, and at some point in that summer, I met Josh Watson, and Josh pointed out at some point, he was like, you guys are training harder for this than I did for my first 50. And that's, once I completed the I-35 challenge, we got going, and he's like, well, a 50 doesn't sound so bad. So I'll go ahead and try that. And we signed up for Prairie Spirit. And by this point in time, we're getting into 2020. And the race was, I think it was March 21st of 2020. And on March 16th, pretty much everything shut down. So we already had our bags packed and everything and to run Prairie Spirit 50. And they ended up shutting down the race, you know, less than a week prior. And that's when we decided to go ahead and run the 50 miles self-sustain, which is the run you were talking about earlier. That was the first time I ran with you, Devin. So the rest of it's just kind of
So yeah, and you've done a ton of stuff since then. So we'll get into that in a minute. But So one thing I'm curious about is you had your moment, you decided, hey, I'm gonna start running, you did a 5K, and for a lot of people that is enough, or they start and they just don't stick with it. But you've been going at it now for, what's it been, 8 or 10 years?
Yeah.
It's been a while. So like what keeps you doing this? Because I know your daughter's, I mean, she's an adult now, living, not even in your house anymore, but you're still moving along. So what is it that keeps you running at all, let alone doing crazy race after crazy race?
Well, I've still got one at home, and it became a point of I wanted to make sure that my girls knew that you can do anything you set your mind to. If you're willing to work for it and you're willing to train for it and put in the work, you can achieve any goal that you're going for. And that was really the driving force. And in there somewhere, it also became, okay, what can I do? Where is my limit? What am I capable of? So I guess I enjoy the group. I enjoy running with everybody, and I enjoy the races. The ultra community is absolutely awesome. It's fantastic bunch of people. So if you ever go to an ultra, you'll realize kind of why people keep coming to the events. And whether you're volunteering, you're crewing, you're pacing, or you're running the event, it's just an incredible group of people.
Now I'm curious too. I said it. Brian and I were joking the other day about the vocal things that we say, but I'm sorry, but I am curious. Brian said it a couple times, previous episodes, that you said you originally started doing it like to show your kids that, hey, dad can do this hard stuff, and if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And that kind of, like, I won't say it ruined it for Brian's daughter, but she, like, I think she had a friend that, or she knew someone that, like, well, they ran 100K, that's a big deal. And then, well, my dad runs 100 miles, like, but because you're doing these things and you're pushing yourself, have you talked to your daughter, or how does she see you, or like does she use like what you've done as like fuel for herself to like go after things in college or in like her young adult life? I mean, do you see that translate at all?
She's always been far tougher on herself than we ever were on her. She had a lot of drive, and my youngest, she is very, very driven as well. Mm-hmm. They both, they take a lot on their plate, and they do a lot of stuff, and I think, we've never really talked about it, because, I'm just crazy dad for mm-hmm. doing all these things. But I like to think that it has had an effect where they realize that, that's a big task or big, goal, but I can get there and I can do that. But yeah, my oldest has graduated college and is working now, and mm-hmm. Did very well in college all the way through, and my youngest is doing extremely well in high school and looks to be achieving everything she's going for as well.
Yeah, I think maybe just by default, by just observing a little bit on all of the Buckleheads and ultra running and their kids, and just like you said, that she just has that drive regardless, and it's like maybe just by default, her seeing you put in the miles and you put in the work, and it's just, this is just what we do.
Right.
And so that just maybe genetically is just like, you don't have to do anything. And it's like that's a goal that, that I have with my boys. And it's like, not necessarily with running, but I want you to put forth an effort in whatever you do. And, Carson's 7. And so seeing it here and there, but we'll see what he gravitates towards. But yeah, you just keep pushing the envelope too. Like, it starts off with not just, but the back-to-back marathons, and then Prairie Spirit 50, and then was it that fall, or was it the next? Yeah, it was that fall,
because
2020 fall. Yeah.
With it, getting canceled in March, with Prairie Spirit getting canceled in March, we got an email about a month later and said our goal is to have Rails to Trails in October. At that point, you know, it was like we had made it through the 50 miler, self-sustain, you know, and run that. I realized that I could do 50 miles, and it was just that what's next approach, and I kind of forgot that there was 100K in there. So it was like, well, could I get ready for a 100 miler by October? You know, could I get trained for that? And I made the mistake of asking the group, do you guys think I've got time to get ready for this?
Oh, yeah,
duh. And of course everybody thought, oh yeah, that's plenty of time. Even though none of us really knew anything about it. I think Josh and Jacqueline were the only two in the group that had done 100 miles at the time. But yeah, of course we could all get ready for it. But so that was, I signed up for the Rails to Trails in October of 2020, and went out and had several of you guys crewing for me and pacing me. The first, I'll say 60 miles went great. Wheels kind of fell off the bus between 60 and 80 a little bit. But we were still making decent time. And I will fully admit I pretty much walked in from 80 to 100, but I still did far better than I would have ever imagined for a first one. A lot of mistakes were made in that one because, again, we had no clue what we were doing. So I thought you had to actually go out and run 100, you know, run solid, and that carried me through about 55, 60 miles, and then from there it was like, I don't think I can run anymore. So then we started on the intervals and things that I've learned that now if you start much slower, you Brian talked about earlier, you know, when you're younger you kind of charge out the gate full force, and usually kind of learn the hard way that wasn't the best tactic. So
Devin will probably disagree with me on this one, but yeah, like running your fastest ever 50 miler at the beginning of a 100-mile race, probably not a good idea. But you said it earlier. I mean, Josh met you late in the race, I think, for your last section.
Yes.
So, you know, Josh had experience with the 100 milers. The rest of us had done maybe some different ultras, but nothing like that length. And like looking back, we had no idea what was going on. You know, you would come in when you were feeling bad and like, what's Shane doing? Well, he's just laying down on the floor in the train station in Garnett. And we're like, okay, well, we'll just wait for him to get up. But versus now we're like, hey, you got 3 minutes, eat this, and go. And back then we're all just going, I don't know. I guess whenever he's ready, I guess he'll get up and run. But it's Reebok came a long ways, and you've had a lot of great races. I mean, it was a great race then for a first 100, but it's just...
Yeah, I finished a little over 25 hours, and I've been told that I was in Garnett's train station for at least 45 minutes. So, I mean, you start doing the backwards math of, hey, I could have broke 24 hours on my first 100, and
and just to plug that race and Prairie Spirit and Kansas Rails to Trails Extravaganza put on by Outlaw 100. I know they're listening, but it's just such a, like, I love how Mile 90 described it. I said it last week too. It's a great first opportunity for a runner to run their first 100 or even first 50 mile, or it's, you know, you're taking care of every 6, 7, 8 miles.
Super volunteers.
Yeah, the volunteers, especially Richmond. Those guys are fire. Or if you really want, like what I'm trying to do, here, I think it's in 4 weeks from it'll be 3 weeks when this comes out, 4 weeks from today when we're recording, when Prairie Spirit is, like, if you're an experienced, like, ultra runner, you can really go after it too. And so, but just to plug that, you know, that's going to be in 3 weeks. Sign up for it. come out, volunteer, all those things. But yeah, you've done a few since then. So I guess once you conquered that first one, it wasn't one and done. Obviously, It was okay. Now what?
Yep. And it was exactly that. It was okay. Now what? So that was in October, and I think the next ultra I did was the Prairie Spirit 100K the following March. Did not train for it hardly at all. I mean, I continued my regular runs that I did, but I didn't actually do a training cycle or anything. And it showed in my results. You know, I would say that was probably my toughest race, just because I got in a bad place mentally in the middle of it. You know, I was defeated mentally in that race. But we luckily had Ed West meet us at probably mile 50, and he really pulled us through that last 10 miles, 12 miles. And I don't think if we hadn't seen Ed, I don't know that I'd have made it through that. I think I would have probably dropped at Richmond or Princeton, just because I was in a bad place mentally on that one. The race started out on that one, and I was running with Brian, and Brian and I were standing there together, and everybody took off. We didn't see another 100K runner. I don't know the rest of the day, and there were 30 of us in the race, but we ended up 9th and 10th place. So we still don't know where we passed everybody. But in my mind,
train station.
In my mind, we were dead last the entire race. And like I said, I was just beating myself up way more than I should have.
Yeah. To this day, I still don't know where we passed them, because every aid station at this race, other than one, is an outdoor aid station. So like everybody's out there. It's not like someone is inside of different buildings and you just miss them. But I remember, because we had planned run walk intervals from the start, and like I said, they just took off, and I'm like, oh, we'll catch them later. Then I'm like, well, I guess we won't catch anybody. And we got done, and like you said, we're looking at the results going, well, okay, maybe, for me at the time, 9th or 10th place out of 30 some runners is that's a good race for me.
Oh, that's a fantastic race.
So it went from being, I guess this wasn't so bad, but during the race, like you said, you're just going, man, I kind of suck at this stuff. So, but
I do think it's interesting too. My second 100-mile attempt was where I got humbled, and so you're coming off the high of completing your first 100, all the things, and then even though your second one wasn't 100, but it sounds like you got humbled a little bit.
A lot.
That was my case when I went after Silver Heels. I got humbled pretty quick, and then I was like, okay, maybe I do need to dial it in and go through a training block and all that stuff. So what was your second 100? You have to count on your fingers.
was it Hell Creek?
Yeah.
I think it was Hell
That's
Creek.
right, yeah.
It would have been Hell Creek that following October.
Yeah.
And that one, I have a love-hate relationship with Hell Creek.
Right.
I love the course. I love the race directors. I love, everybody involved with the race. That race doesn't like me real well. So my first attempt at Hell Creek 100, I dehydrated at mile 50. I didn't realize that's what it was at the time, because I had never dehydrated before. So I ended up dropping out. In hindsight, I've learned that probably could have just sat down for a few, because I had plenty of time. I could have probably sat down for a couple of hours, got some liquids in me, maybe taken a nap, and I'd have probably been okay. But we made the decision for me to drop on that one. It wasn't until my second time at Hell Creek that I actually completed the 100.
Yeah.
So,
boy, that redemption is
and that was
so sweet.
And it was. I spent the entire next year training for that one race, and it was awesome crossing that finish line. So
Yeah.
you know, it was kind of like just that satisfaction of finally getting over that hump.
Yeah.
Because it kicked my butt the first year.
Yeah. There's a lot of I really like talking last week's episode about all of our DNFs, and I think in the future we're going to do a podcast just talking about DNFs and go in depth with the mental game and when you should pull the plug, when you shouldn't. But I love I've run some incredible races, but there wasn't really a better feeling that I've had in a race when I went back out to Silver Hills and I finished that thing. And I'm sure you guys would agree when you get Hell Creek had your guys' number for a minute. I've yet to run the 100 out there. I think I'm borderline afraid. But they do say it runs a little hotter out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that course will humble you.
Yeah.
On paper, it doesn't look that tough. I mean, when you look at it, it's Kansas. You know,
Yeah.
your mental is, oh well, it's flat. You know, it is not flat. There aren't any hills. You know, one great big hill that just stands out. It's just a combination of you're constantly going up or down.
And a narrow
very
mountain bike
narrow
trail
and it's a beautiful place. Great scenery, but you are in the wide open. You know, you're on rock. There is no or very little trees. So when it's hot out there, that sun just cooks you.
Yeah, and for new listeners too, I think I don't remember what episode it was in, but 12 or 13, we had Chase and Casey Heyman, the race directors and owners of Ultraverse. We had them on the podcast, and they talked about why he chose that, because he lived out in Hayes. And whenever I ask people if they've ever been to Wilson Lake, they're like, well, no, but I've driven past the sign. It's literally turn right and just go up there. And Mark talked about it too. It's you would have no idea that you were in Kansas, and it's so awesome. It's right on I-70.
It's amazing how quickly the layout of the land changes once you turn off of I-70. I mean, I don't even know that you're a mile north of I-70 when you start getting into the rolling hills.
Yeah, and that really is a tough race, and it surprises a lot of people. I remember one year there was someone from Colorado that came out to it, and I didn't know him personally, but I think he was very surprised that, again, not mountains, so you're not doing a big, 2,000, 3,000 foot climb, but it's just up and down and curves. That's all that course is. So it gets to you after a while, and it's also interesting because you're running and you'll see someone else literally 10 feet from you, but you have no idea if they are 2 miles behind you or 2 miles in front of you. Same way with the aid stations. You're hey, there's the aid station right there. And you're well, you really have 45 more minutes before you're going to get there.
Zigzag everywhere because all the switchbacks.
I always joke the first time you see the Hell Hill aid station, you don't even have to raise your voice to talk to them. I mean, they're so close, but you're still 3 miles away from that aid station.
That's so interesting.
And so you went back, you finished the 100 the next year, right?
Correct.
And then you got even dumber over this time, and out there at Hell Creek, they have what they call the Pure Hell, which is 140 miles. So that course is 20-mile loops, and so for the 100 you do it 5 loops, and for the 140 you do it 7 loops. So you decided 100 wasn't enough. What made you decide, hey, I'm stepping up and going further on this?
Stupidity.
Yeah. Because you had signed up too.
Yeah. I actually signed up first.
Oh.
But no, we talked to a couple of other people that had run the Pure Hell the first year, and they said, well, really, you can walk this with the time frame that they give you. You could walk this and finish it. And I got that in my head and decided, oh, well, let's go ahead and try this. Given a year out, we should be able to get to where we can, physically be able to run the 140. And in the meantime, we added in the Flint Hills 50 miler as a, we were originally looking at it as a training run in April of that year. And then we had done Ring the Springs 100 in Colorado. So all of those were the same year as that, and used those as training races, kinda, to test out different, supplements, and I used a lot of Proxima C in those. Great stuff by Ultraverse Supplements. But we used those races as kind of training. Going into Pure Hell the first time, I thought I was ready. We, trained good. What we did not train for is the fact that in the start of October that it would be 96 degrees for 3 straight days. And like I said, there is no cover, no shade or anything out there, and you're on rock, so it was extremely hot. And unfortunately, that year, the heat got to me, and I ended up dropping it, getting pulled basically at mile 50 because I was so sick. So then I signed up for Pure Hell again last year, and it's kind of the same result. Because surely 2 years in a row we couldn't get hot weekend, and
Surely not.
yeah, at the end of September. But yes, it was just as hot. And I made it 82 miles this year before getting sick and dropping.
Now, are you gonna be like Caleb and just like, you're gonna have to kill me? Like, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna finish this thing.
That is the plan.
Let's go.
I am signed up for it again because I'm not very bright.
So like I know we joke about being dumb or doing this stuff, but like I mean it would be very easy just to be like, that race isn't for me. I don't like this course, or it's too hot. But again, you're already signed up and you're training right now to get ready for it again. So why? Like I mean, it'd be easy just to be like, nah, I don't need that. But you keep going back because you're going to get it one of these years.
There's just something about it. I know I can do that race. There is not a doubt in my mind that I can get that race done. Each time I've done just something small that has ended up sabotaging my race. Whether not training for the heat or, not eating properly, not keeping liquids, getting enough liquid, starting off too fast. Every year I've had something that I've done where I can go back after the fact and say, well, I made a mistake here. And you guys talked about it in last week's show. Nothing ever goes to plan when you're talking 100 miles or more. Mm-hmm. Something always comes up that you're not anticipating. But when those came up, I didn't adjust properly. And I know I've done further distance than the 140. At Styx last year I did 150. So I know I can do the distance. I've done the 100 on that course, so I know I can get it done.
Yeah, I think like in your case it's Pure Hell. I would assume that's like really driving you, and like not necessarily the why at this point, but it was fun last week talking about it, like what drives everyone. And I've been following a lot of people on social media, like right now, like there's a lady I follow, she would never listen, but it would be totally cool if we reach out to her to get her on the podcast. Her name is Christy Aramano. But she just went after a 3-hour marathon, and she, vlogged her whole process and everything, and she just straight crushed it. But that 3-hour marathon was her gold star. Like, that was what was driving her. And I think it's just so cool to, I think in our niche circle that we got of ultra runners and buckleheads, like, we have our whys, we have what drives us. But there's so many people that live day to day with no drive. They just show up, go to work, clock out, hang out with the family for a little bit, go to bed, repeat. And I just think it's so important to live the way that we live, to show people, hey, there's a lot of life that can be lived. And I think with what we're doing and the races we choose to do and what drives us, like Brian, you going after Uray, everyone that's going after that monster is inspiring the hell out of me, because that's a monster. So I don't know, just pat ourselves on the back for just doing cool stuff, and the way that, like, you, Shane, continue to push the envelope. And when you guys were out at the Sticks, just through all the storms, and you're still cranking miles, and you guys ran 150 miles in BFE Western Kansas, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And yeah, it's just
Yeah, I don't know, I used to say that there was no way that I would ever attempt a 200, and now I'm at least considering, at least considering it. So yeah, I think there's always that target out there, in the distance. This year, I'm definitely concentrating more on pure hell, and getting it done. This is my year. It took a while for me to sign up for this one again, because I had to get it right in my head that I can do it. Last year was a little bit defeating. It was a tough pill to swallow when I didn't finish it again, because I'd never had that happen. Always on anything that I had tried, whether it was my first 6-mile run where I had to quit at 4 miles in, or the first 100-mile at Hell Creek. I've never not gotten it on the second attempt. So that was a different, like I said, that was kind of a different pill to swallow on that one, that it was tough to get through my head that I wasn't good enough a second time. But again, I know I can get that race done. So
you and Caleb are both going to get that done, and you're going to get both those buckles. And when you just said that right there, I've only been picked up on a training run one time, and I still remember it. Like, it was super hot, I didn't bring any water, and I called my wife to come and pick me up. And it was I was training for my first 100, and I'm like, I'm done. That was 5 years ago, and I still remember it. I was on Northwest Button Road, and I'm like, Mom, you gotta come get me. Yeah.
Every now and then, when you're out there, just getting your day. And sometimes it's better to admit that it's not your day and call it, than trying to suffer through, a bad run. Now, in a race, obviously we can't do that always, but yeah, I always joke, everything over 20, it hurts. Every run over 20 miles hurts. Sometimes they hurt a lot more than others. So there have been training runs where I've ended up either turning back early or
well, cool. So your focus this year is Hell Creek 140. Have you been eyeing any 200s?
I'd like to do the Summit someday.
The Summit,
just
Summit,
because of
Cowboy,
the area that it's in.
Yeah, for some reason I think the Cowboy is drawing me. I'm not going to get it done this year, but they both are awesome. But yeah, this has been fun. Yeah, you guys are awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun watching you progress, because I think the first time Bree got in touch and we were both running like as adults. I think we were running at the lake, and I remember like a couple times you're like, I gotta stop and walk, I can't do this. And then there was a long stretch where we're running in a group and we're going, oh, God, who let Shane in front? I don't want to go this fast. So like I mean, you have like, you know, I think from when you first found this group, you were still pretty new to running again as an adult, but like I said, you've had several 100-mile finishes since then, the 150, and so like it's fun and it's inspiring. Like I said, you're like, you know, we'll go do a race and I'll be like, oh, got that race done, that was awesome. The next day someone in the group was like, I signed up for this, and you're like, oh wait, what is this? Like, I have to go do this now. Like, you know, so it's just you know, what you've done with Devin, all the other Buckleheads, people in Topeka, like it's so great having a huge number of people doing this, because that alone is enough to keep you motivated and be like, that looks fun, I want to go do that. Or maybe you're not even going to do the race, but you're going to go out and help crew or pace or whatever and be part of it.
Yeah, I had some good, I think while we were out crewing and pacing Shane Plemons, I had some good conversation at the Hawk with you. But I'm curious as to, I said it again. I'm going to keep saying it. Sorry, listeners. I'm curious, though. But, so, you work full-time job, kids at home.
Yeah.
I don't like using the word balance, but I am going to use it. And how have you balanced, like when you initially started running, you ran with your daughters, or with your oldest, and then, you know, as you're upping the mileage, upping the training, working full time, being a present dad, being a husband, all the things, like just maybe use that word balance a little bit and like explain how that process has been, because as someone, like, I struggle with it sometimes. I try to pick certain races and certain things that like I know I can train for, but a lot of times it's waking up early before anyone even wakes up. And so just talk about how that has been, and then,
Yeah, that's definitely the struggle. I try to use time that isn't already accounted for, whether that's waking up early or usually for my weekday runs, I'm off work a couple hours before my wife is, or I get home a couple of hours before my wife does. So I go out and get my runs in then, to where when I get home from that, she's getting home about the same time. And then we've got our family night, or, you know, our family time the rest of the evening. Weekends for my long runs, you know, we talked about it this morning. There's times in the summertime when we're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get a 25, 30 mile run in. You know, so I try to adjust my times where I'm the one, you know, if I'm out a couple of hours sleep, that's on me because I made the choice to do that. I don't want to not have a family activity be done or not make it to something because of my running. So I've tried to adjust my training around family time.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of what we all have to do, especially like 99.9 of us are not on the elite level. We're not sponsored by Hoka. We're not, you know, we just talk about it on podcasts a lot. But I think just, I mean, that's the key, is how can we least impact the family to have the right amount of balance. But at the same time, you know, I can't do this without Shay. Like, even coming over here talking with you, Brian, she knows how important it is to, you know, do this podcast and talk about it and learn about my friends and learn about all the guests. But you have to have the support. And even my 7-year-old, like, he was actually kind of shocked I didn't go running this morning. But I'm like, you know what, buddy, I was just tired. But yeah, you have to have their support, because my wife now at this point knows the end result of a finished race requires this. And I just maybe talk about just how important that support is too.
Yeah, 100%. You could not do this type of an activity without the support at home. You know, whether it's the kids supporting you and cheering you on, or your spouse, you know, supporting you, cheering you on, making sacrifices of time. You know, there's a lot of times what we don't talk about a lot of times is, you know, Friday night. You know, that's the night a lot of people go out and do things, and you know, well, I've got to be in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock because I was gonna say because I've got to be up at 4 o'clock the next morning. You know, so those sacrifices are definitely on the family. You know, and it definitely limits things that you can do. Or, you know, you go to an activity on Saturday afternoon. Well, you not only got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go run, but you ran 30 miles. You know, you're pretty tired and sore, you know, but, you know, family definitely tends to, with the support and everything, have, you know, make the sacrifice of allowing you to be tired, or, you know, realizing that you're going to be a little bit slower moving, or, you know, different things along that line. You could not do this without family support.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really cool is, we haven't ever said names yet, but I'll just say your oldest daughter. I know she's been out to Hell Creek at least a couple times now, volunteering her time. You know, she's got medical knowledge, and she's out there when it's 100 degrees, helping people out and getting them through the race. So that's really cool to see.
Yep. And my youngest daughter is looking at running her first half marathon at Top City this year.
Let's go.
So I'm excited to help her get ready for that and run that
That's
one
cool.
with her. So
That's cool.
That's kind of my plan in the short term.
Yeah. BH Pod 15, get her that discount.
We got a discount code.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this podcast will come out the Friday right before Skyline. So there's no race day sign up for Skyline, is there?
I don't believe so, but we can check on that.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, it'll be the Wednesday before this comes out. It's like when the online cutoff is.
Yeah.
But we can post if there is race day sign up.
Yeah, but all three of us are running Skyline. You guys are doing 6. I'm dumb enough to run 2 mile loops for 12 hours, but it's one of my favorite races of the year, and I'm super excited for it. If you guys have any goals, or just go out to have fun?
Just go out to have fun.
Yeah, mainly just to have fun. I mean, I hit 28 miles last year and was like just a couple minutes short of hitting enough time for 30, but right now with the trail being covered in snow,
It's gonna be a mess.
it may, I don't think we're gonna see as many miles as we have like last year where weather was perfect, but
You never know.
with that said, like, it'd be cool if I could pass my number from last year, but I'm also not really worried about it. It's right now, everything I do is leading up to the URA 100, and that's it. These are all for fun and to support Jonathan and have fun. So
Yeah. Well, awesome. As we wrap up here a little bit, bro, thanks for doing this, man. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. You listen all the time. I always say you're kind of I'm not gonna say silent assassin a little bit, but you're a little bit quieter. But I think you put in more miles than a lot of the group. Like, you were out there crushing miles all the time, and I love being one of the younger guys in the group, because I do make the mistake a lot of times of going out too fast and then getting a piece of humble pie later in the race. And but seeing you guys continue to crush and to push it, and it's inspiring. And I said at the beginning of the podcast, like, when I was a young kid, I'm sure it was like that when you guys were kids. A 50-year-old or someone pushing 50 when you guys were kids, or when I was a kid, like, they were on death's door. Like, they might not have been doing so hot. Like, you know, it's kind of true though. Like, they've worked themselves into the bone, like to their bones. And I think now with the knowledge of taking care of yourself and just kind of like, not everyone doesn't have to be out running ultras, but I think just taking care of yourself and continuing to move is the key, right? Yeah. But it's super fun. Getting humbled all the time. I'm hoping not to get humbled by Ed at Prairie Spirit. We'll see. I think Ed's running Skylight too, isn't he?
yeah.
he told me he was going to push it and kind of see what happens, and I'm hoping for a good race. So cool.
Very cool.
Yeah. As we wrap up, Brian, you got anything else to plug? Shane, you want to, or you got Hell Creek, you got Pure Hell. You're going to get that. Yeah. You got anything else, bro?
Nope, nothing in particular. Like I said, we talked about the Skyline Scramble, which will be the day after this comes out, but May 3rd, so it'd be like a couple months after this comes out, is the Top City Half Marathon. Like I said, it's a great it's a great first half marathon. They also have a 5K, so rehab, nothing, Shane actually was one of the original board members, I guess, to help get that started. So it's right now it's the only half marathon in Topeka. So come out and take advantage of that, so you don't have to travel somewhere to run a half marathon. And if you're not a runner, they always need volunteers. So just support something local, make some good stuff happen in Topeka.
Yep.
So that's the only little plug I've got. So I think, Shane, we've got some rapid fire questions for you.
All right.
These are almost harder than some of the other things we talk about.
All right. Coke or Pepsi?
Water.
Or water. Okay. That's an answer. That's an answer most have done. Garmin or Koros?
Garmin.
Awesome. Sorry, Brian.
Ed still likes me.
China can track you guys. It's fine. Music or no music?
Group run.
When you're running.
I was gonna say group run without,
Yeah.
if I'm running on my own.
What's your go-to shoes?
Hokas,
Hokas?
Cliftons
Okay.
for road and speed
Got
goods
the
for
speed
trail.
goods. Yeah. Now, if you're going for any U.S., was it AT, any official record,
Yeah.
make sure to check your shoes,
Right.
okay? Man, that was... I feel for him a little bit, but I can't remember his name. I followed him on social media and I saw all that play out, but the way that he was disqualified essentially for getting the second fastest time in history was wild. But check your shoes, bro. All right, what's your go-to food on the trail? Your snack?
Proxima C,
Yeah.
and then I usually on the trail use fruit snacks.
Also, are you guys excited for the new Proxima flavors?
Yes,
Did you see that post
Yep.
that
I
Yeah,
did
they
see
made?
that. I think that'll be a great addition.
Yeah, I mean, I've drank in my fair share of Proxima. You guys more than me, but I'm stoked for, what is it, grape and orange?
Grape and
Lemon lime.
Lemon lime. Let's go. All right, if you had a celebrity pacer or crew member, who would it be?
Probably like Kevin Hart. I know he
Oh, that'd be
runs.
fun.
I was
Yeah.
just keep you laughing. And, I think that'd be fun.
Just throw the occasional short joke and he'll fire back at you. All right, and then we got quite the playlist brewing for Spotify. What's your song to add to it?
One of the songs that's always fired me up is "Lunatic Fringe" by Red Rider.
Nice, that's a throwback.
Yep.
Or at least it
Goes
Sorry,
back to my
it's-
wrestling days.
It's not an old joke,
Yep.
but it was a throwback for me.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think looking at the playlist here, we got Skillet, Eminem, Beyonce, Lord Huron, all the things. That's so fun. So, well, cool. Thanks for doing this. I was going to say something last week, but I forgot to. But I think it's so interesting. I think maybe behind everybody's ultra sign up, they should have not necessarily job title, but like field. But like I was gonna say something last week in the Y100, like we had a former welder, we had a truck driver, a school administrator, an IT guy, someone like Caleb works at the hospital. I'm like, that's cool. And you guys are both IT guys, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. So I don't know. I find that so interesting how many different job titles are sprinkled throughout an ultra, like a race starting line. I don't know. Do you think that's cool? I think it's cool.
I do. I think they really do draw in a pretty diverse crowd.
It's wild.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'd be curious as to when you get to the really expensive ones, what they're like. How do they afford that stuff?
I've often wondered that myself. Like
Sponsors.
like I said,
Fair enough.
sponsors, or maybe they're single or no kids, or just, I mean, there's people out there that make a lot of money. So
Yeah.
you know, that
Yeah.
might just be their thing.
Well, cool. All right. If you're listening to this during the Skyline, you know, running 2 mile loops, keep running,
Yeah.
keep hammering out there. So, all right, run happy, train hard. We'll see you out there.